2 a.m. July 18th, 1945. The Sea of Okhotsk, if you look at a map. This place is the end of the known world. It is a freezing, desolate stretch of black water located north of the Japanese mainland. The air here bites your exposed skin like a physical weapon. The fog is so thick and so heavy that you can barely see the bow of your own ship. And lurking silently beneath this freezing water is a predator, the USS Barb. She is a Gato-class submarine, a hunter. Prowling deep in the Emperor's backyard, inside the steel hull, the air is heavy. It smells of recycled oxygen, diesel oil, hydraulic fluid, and the sweat of men who haven't seen the sun in weeks. The temperature inside is stifling, a sharp contrast to the freezing void just a few inches away on the other side of the pressure hull. Commander Eugene Fluckey stands at the periscope in the conning tower. His men call him Lucky Fluckey. He is a legend in the Pacific. He has sunk more tonnage, destroyed more enemy ships, and caused more absolute chaos than almost any other skipper in the United States Navy. His crew worships him. They trust him because he wins, and more importantly, because he brings them home. But tonight, Lucky is not happy. He spins the periscope handle, scanning the horizon through the crosshairs. He is looking for a silhouette, a shadow, anything that breaks the line where the black ocean meets the black sky. Nothing, just empty. Cold water. The war is entering its final bleeding stages. The Japanese Imperial Navy, once the terror of the Pacific, is now rusting at the bottom of the ocean. The American blockade has been so effective, so absolutely crushing, that there are almost no targets left to shoot at. The USS Barb is sitting on a full load of torpedoes, with nothing to kill. Fluckey steps back from the scope. He rubs his eyes. He is frustrated. He can feel the tension radiating off his crew. These men are hunters. They didn't bring this submarine thousands of miles into the most dangerous waters on Earth just to sit here and watch the waves. They want action. They want to finish this war. Fluckey paces the small steel deck of the conning tower. He stops. He looks at the chart table. He gives an order that sounds insane. Get us closer. Take us into the shallows. The crew looks at each other. Shallows mean death for a submarine. A submarine relies on depth to survive. If they are spotted in shallow water, they cannot dive deep to escape depth charges. They will be trapped against the sea floor, sitting ducks for any Japanese destroyer or patrol aircraft. But they trust Lucky. They follow the order. The Barb creeps forward. The electric motors hum quietly, pushing the massive vessel dangerously close to the coastline of Karafuto, also known as Sakhalin Island. This is Japanese soil. Fluckey grips the periscope handles again. He presses his eye to the rubber eyepiece. He sees the dark, jagged outline of the shore. He sees the mountains rising up like teeth against the night sky. He sees the small fishing villages, dark and asleep. And then, he sees it, a light. It is not a ship, it is not a plane, it is moving along the coast, steady, rhythmic, a trail of white smoke drifting into the night sky, illuminated by the firebox below. It is a train. Fluckey watches it intently. He tracks its movement. It is a Japanese supply train, snake-like, winding its way along the coastline. It is loaded with ammunition, fuel, and raw materials, heading south to supply the enemy military bases that are preparing for the final invasion. He watches the train disappear around a bend in the mountains. He looks at the ocean, empty. He looks back at the land, full of targets. A thought strikes him, a thought so wild, so reckless, that he almost laughs out loud in the quiet control room. The rule book says submarines fight ships. The rule book says sailors stay on the boat. The rule book says you do not engage land targets unless you are firing your deck gun from a safe distance. But Eugene Fluckey has never cared much for rule books. He turns to his executive officer. His voice is low, barely a whisper over the low hum of the ventilation fans. He says, "If we can't find anything to sink, we are going to blow that train up." The officer blinks. He thinks he misheard. He looks at the captain's face, expecting a smile, expecting a joke, but Lucky Fluckey isn't smiling. His eyes are cold, calculated. Fluckey calls a meeting in the wardroom. The officers gather around the small table. The coffee is bitter. The mood is tense. Fluckey points to the map on the table. He taps his finger on the railway line that hugs the coast. He says, "We are going to put a landing party ashore. We are going to plan a chart, and when that train comes back, we are going to blow it off the tracks." The room goes silent. The only sound is the dripping of condensation from a pipe overhead. One of the officers shifts in his seat. He clears his throat. "Captain," he says, "we are a submarine. We don't have commandos. We don't have marines. We have sailors." Fluckey nods. "I know," he says, "but we have the element of surprise. The Japanese think they are safe here. They think the war is out at sea. They think the only thing they have to fear is a B-29 bomber high above the clouds. They do not expect 8 American sailors to crawl out of the ocean in the middle of the night." He looks at every man in the room. He says, "This is psychological warfare. If we blow up a train on their own soil, they will panic. They will think we can land anywhere. They will have to divert thousands of troops to guard every mile of coastline. We will break their spirit." The officers look at the map. They look at the railway line, and slowly, the shock turns into something else. A grin spreads across the face of the torpedo officer. It is crazy. It is suicidal. It has never been done in the history of naval warfare, but if anyone can pull it off, it is the crew of the USS Barb. This wasn't just a mission anymore. This was an invasion. Fluckey stands up. "The meeting is over," he says. "Find me a bomb." The decision was made. They were going to do it, but enthusiasm is one thing, engineering is another. And right now, the crew of the USS Barb faced a massive technical problem. They were a submarine. They were designed to hunt in the deep ocean. They were not an infantry unit. They did not carry landmines. They did not carry dynamite for blowing up bridges. They had absolutely no equipment for a ground assault if they were going to destroy a train. They had to build a bomb from scratch, and they had to do it with whatever junk they could find lying around the ship. The engineers went to work. They scoured the submarine, they opened lockers, they checked the bilges. They found a 55-pound scuttling charge. This was a block of high explosives, dense, heavy, and extremely volatile. It was designed for one purpose only, to self-destruct the submarine if they were ever captured by the enemy. It was enough explosive power to turn the USS Barb into a twisted wreck of steel. This would be their bomb, but a bomb is useless without a trigger. This was the hardest part. How do you make a bomb explode exactly when a train passes over it? If you use a timer, you have to guess the train schedule perfectly. If you are wrong by even 1 minute, the train passes safely, and the bomb explodes harmlessly in the dirt. If you use a remote control wire, someone has to stay on the beach to push the button. Commander Fluckey refused to leave any man behind. He wanted a mechanism that would do the work for them. The solution came from an unlikely place: Billy Hatfield. Hatfield was an electrician's mate. He was just a kid, but he had a sharp engineering mind. He looked at the problem, he looked at the heavy scuttling charge, and he remembered something from his childhood back in the States. He remembered cracking walnuts on the railroad tracks. He explained it to the officers. He said, "When I was a boy, I would put nuts on the tracks when the train rolled over them. The rail would bend, just a tiny fraction of an inch, but it moved. That was the key." Hatfield grabbed a micro switch. He grabbed some batteries. He wired them together in a way that looked like a high school science project gone wrong. He explained the plan. "We dig a hole under the track. We put the bomb in the hole. We place this switch between the wooden railroad tie and the steel rail. When the heavy engine rolls over it, the weight pushes the rail down. The rail clicks the switch, and boom." It was brilliant, simple, effective, but it was also terrifying. Because this switch had to be sensitive enough to detect the bending of a steel rail, but stable enough not to go off in their hands. If the switch was too sensitive, the vibration of the rubber boat hitting the beach could set it off. If that 55-pound charge exploded while they were carrying it, there would be nothing left of the men, just pink mist. Fluckey looked at the diagram. He looked at Hatfield. "Build it," he said. Now came the human element. The bomb was ready. The plan was set. Now Fluckey needed men crazy enough to carry it out. He picked up the intercom microphone. His voice echoed through every compartment of the submarine. From the torpedo room to the engine room, he said, "I need 8 volunteers for a sabotage mission on shore." He paused. The silence on the boat was heavy. He continued, "I will not lie to you. The probable outcome of this mission is death or capture if we are spotted. The submarine will have to dive. You will be left behind." He waited. In any other navy, on any other ship, a speech like that would be met with fear, hesitation, but this was the USS Barb. Every single man on the boat raised his hand. Every single one, even the cook wanted to go, even a Japanese prisoner of war they had rescued earlier. Even he volunteered. He wanted to help blow up the train too. Fluckey was moved. He looked at his crew, his boys. They were tired. They were worn out, but they were ready to die for this crazy idea. But he could only take 8. He had to be selective. He needed the best. He chose Paul Saunders to lead the team. Saunders was the chief gunner's mate, tough as nails. A man who could keep his head when bullets started flying. He chose Billy Hatfield. He had to go. He was the only one who knew how to wire the bomb without killing them all. He chose 6 others, the strongest swimmers, the best marksmen, the ones who had proven they could operate in the dark. The preparation began immediately. Chosen 8 gathered in the forward torpedo room. The atmosphere was heavy. They didn't have camouflage paint, so they used axle grease and shoe polish. They smeared the black sludge over their faces, their necks, their hands. They looked like demons rising from the oil. They checked their weapons. They didn't have assault rifles. They had a few rusty carbines, some Thompson submachine guns, and grenades. They sharpened their knives. They inflated 2 small rubber boats. They checked the air valves in the background. The rest of the crew watched. There were handshakes. There were claps on the shoulder. Friends were saying goodbye to friends. They exchanged letters. "If you don't make it back, tell my wife I love her. If you get stuck on that beach, save the last bullet for yourself. Don't let them take you alive." The reality of the mission was setting in. This wasn't a game. They were 8 sailors with no infantry training, about to invade the homeland of the Japanese Empire. The clock ticked. The sun had set. It was time to go. Midnight, July 22nd. The Sea of Okhotsk is a graveyard of silence. The water is smooth as glass. The moon is hidden behind a thick ceiling of low-hanging clouds. It is pitch black, 950 yards off the coast of Japan. The surface of the water breaks, slowly, silently. The USS Barb rises from the depths. She breaches the surface like a massive steel beast gasping for air. Water cascades off her hull. The conning tower cuts through the fog. They are dangerously close. 900 yards is nothing. It is point-blank range. If a Japanese shore battery turns on a spotlight right now, the game is over. The Barb will be blown out of the water before she can fire a single shot. The hatch on the deck cracks open. The seal hisses. Cold air rushes into the submarine. It smells of salt. It smells of seaweed. It smells of land. Commander Fluckey climbs up to the bridge. He scans the darkness with his binoculars. He signals to the crew below. Go. The 8 men climb out of the hatch. They move like shadows. Their faces are blackened with grease. Their uniforms are dark. They are carrying carbines, knives, and the 55-pound bomb that could kill them all with one wrong move. They haul 2 rubber rafts onto the wet steel deck. They inflate them. The sound of the air pumps seems deafening in the quiet night. They lower the boats into the freezing black water. The ocean temperature is barely above freezing. If a man falls in, the shock alone could stop his heart. They lower the bomb. Gentle, careful Paul Saunders, the team leader, looks up at the bridge. He looks at Captain Fluckey. There are no salutes, no dramatic speeches, just a nod. The men climb into the rafts. 4 men in the first boat, 4 men in the second. They push off from the side of the submarine. The paddle begins. Dip, pull, pull. They have to coordinate their strokes perfectly. If a paddle hits the side of the rubber boat, it makes a hollow thud that carries for miles over the water, so they move in slow motion. The submarine starts to fade behind them. It becomes a black shape in the fog, And then, it is gone. They are alone. 8 men floating in 2 tiny balloons, heading toward the heart of the Japanese Empire. The silence is heavy. The only sound is the heavy breathing of the men and the soft lap of water against rubber. They paddle for 20 minutes. The shore is getting closer. They can see the white line where the waves hit the sand. And then, the nightmare scenario, a sound at first. It is just a vibration in the air, a low throb, thump, thump, thump. Saunders freezes. He raises a hand, stop. The men lift their paddles out of the water. They drift. They listen. The sound is getting louder. It is an engine, a diesel engine, out of the fog bank to their right. A shape emerges. It is a ship, a Japanese patrol boat. It is cruising down the coastline, running dark. No lights, just a shadow moving against the black water. It is heading straight for them, back on the submarine. Fluckey sees it too. He grips the railing of the bridge. His knuckles turn white. He is faced with an impossible choice. The kind of choice that haunts a commander for the rest of his life. If he fires his deck guns to destroy the patrol boat, the flash will alert the entire island. The mission fails. The element of surprise is lost. But if he dives the submarine to save the ship, he leaves his 8 men alone on the surface. They will be spotted. They will be machine-gunned in the water. Fluckey waits. He doesn't give the order to fire. He doesn't give the order to dive. He holds his ground in the rafts. The men are terrified. They are completely exposed. Saunders whispers, "Get down, flat." The men collapse into the bottom of the boats. They press their faces against the cold, wet rubber. They cover their heads. They try to make themselves invisible. The patrol boat chugs closer. It is so close now they can smell the diesel exhaust. They can hear the crew talking on the deck, Japanese voices, laughing. The wake of the patrol boat hits the rafts. The little rubber boats bob up and down violently. The men hold their breath. They wait for the searchlight. They wait for the bullets, but the light never comes. The patrol boat keeps moving. The crew is looking out to sea, looking for big ships. They aren't looking down. They don't see the tiny black specks floating in the trough of the waves. The engine noise begins to fade. Thump, thump, thump. Silence. They are safe. Saunders lifts his head. He looks around. The coast is clear. Paddle, he whispers. They dig their blades into the water. Harder now, faster. The adrenaline is pumping through their veins. 10 minutes later, the bottom of the first raft scrapes against something hard. Gravel. They jump out. The water is waist deep. It is freezing cold, soaking through their trousers instantly. They drag the boats up onto the sand. They step onto the beach. It is done. July 22nd, 1945. Paul Saunders takes a step forward. His boot sinks into the wet sand. He is standing on Japan. This is not an island outpost. This is not an occupied territory. This is the homeland. They are the first American combat troops to set foot here, but there is no time to think about history. They have work to do. They drag the boats into the tall bamboo grass at the edge of the beach. They cover them with branches. They hide the paddles if anyone finds these boats. There is no escape. They gather around Saunders. He checks his compass. He points inland. The railway tracks are 600 yards that way, through the swamp, through the grass. The night is quiet again, but it is a deceptive quiet somewhere in the distance. A dog starts to bark. It's a sharp, rhythmic bark, a guard dog. The men freeze. Is it barking at them? Did it smell them? They wait. The barking continues, then stops. Saunders signals. Move out. They pick up the 55-pound bomb. It feels heavier now. They slip into the tall grass, disappearing into the enemy landscape. The clock is ticking. 1:30 a.m. The beach is behind them now. The safety of the ocean is gone. The 8 men are moving inland. They are crawling through a nightmare of terrain. Thick bamboo grass, waist high, that cuts at their uniforms and slices their skin. Swampy ground that sucks at their boots with every step. They move in single file. Saunders is in the lead. They are sailors. They are used to steel decks and recycled air. They are not used to this, the smell of wet earth, the sound of crickets that seem deafening in the silence, the wind rustling through the trees. Every shadow looks like a soldier. Every snap of a twig sounds like a rifle bolt. They know where they are. They are less than a mile from a Japanese garrison. There are hundreds, maybe thousands. of enemy troops sleeping just over the ridge if they are discovered. It won't be a battle. It will be an execution. They push forward, breathing hard, sweating despite the cold. Suddenly, the trees break. Saunders raises a fist. The line stops. There it is. The railway, 2 lines of steel running north to south, glinting faintly in the starlight. This is the artery, this is the target, but as Saunders scans the tracks, his blood runs cold. About 100 yards down the line, there is a structure, a wooden tower, rising above the trees, and in the window of that tower, a light is burning. It is a guard post, manned, awake. The men crouch low in the grass. They look at Saunders. This wasn't in the plan. They can't plant a bomb right under the nose of a guard tower. They should move, go further down the track, but Saunders shakes his head. He knows something about human nature. He knows that guards look out. They look at the perimeter. They don't look down. They don't expect the enemy to be crazy enough to sit right at their feet. He whispers, "We do it here." It is the most dangerous decision of the night. They crawl forward. They reach the gravel embankment of the railway. They slide up to the tracks, lying flat against the wooden ties. They are so close to the tower they can hear the murmur of voices inside. They can smell the cigarette smoke drifting down from the window. Now, the digging begins. They need to bury the 55-pound bomb under the tracks, but the ground here is rock hard. It is compacted gravel and frozen earth. They have small entrenching tools, but they can't use them. The sound of metal hitting a rock would ring out like a bell in the quiet night. The guards would hear it instantly, so they use their hands. The men claw at the ground. They dig like animals. They pull up sharp stones. They tear at the roots of the weeds. It is brutal work. The gravel tears their gloves. It cuts into their skin. Fingernails break. Blood starts to seep from their fingertips, mixing with the black dirt. The pain is sharp, stinging, but no one makes a sound. They dig for 20 minutes. It feels like 20 years. Finally, the hole is deep enough. They drag the heavy explosive charge forward. They lower it gently into the grave they have dug. It fits perfectly. Now comes the moment of truth. Billy Hatfield moves forward. He is the electrician, the inventor, the only man who understands the device that is about to go into the ground. He is holding the micro switch. This is a tiny device, a simple pressure switch, but right now, it is the most dangerous object on Earth. The plan is to wedge this switch between the wooden railroad tie and the steel rail. The clearance is tiny, less than an inch. Hatfield has to slide the switch into that gap. It has to be tight enough so it doesn't fall out, but not so tight that the pressure triggers the bomb instantly. If his hand shakes, if he pushes too hard, if the rail shifts, the circuit will close. The 55-pound bomb will detonate in his face. It will vaporize him and the 7 men watching him. The crew stops digging. They stop moving. They almost stop breathing. They form a tight circle around Hatfield. They use their bodies to block the wind, to block any light. Hatfield lies on his stomach. He puts his face right next to the cold steel rail. He can see the rust on the metal. He can smell the creosote on the wood. His hands are covered in grease and dirt, but they are steady. He takes a breath and holds it. He slides the switch under the rail. He pushes gently. The metal scrapes softly against the wood. Is it too tight? Is it too loose? He adjusts it, millimeter by millimeter. Sweat drips from his forehead. It stings his eyes. He doesn't blink. Back on the submarine, Commander Fluckey is pacing the control room. He checks the clock on the bulkhead. 2:30 a.m. They have been gone too long. Every minute they stay on that beach increases the risk of discovery. The tide is changing. Sun will be up in a few hours. He looks at the officer of the deck. He says, "Give them 10 more minutes. If they aren't back, we might have to leave without them." He hates the words as he says them, but he knows the reality. He cannot risk the submarine for 8 men back on the tracks. Hatfield freezes. He feels the switch click into place. He pulls his hand back, slowly, very slowly. The switch holds. The bomb is armed. He looks up at Saunders. He nods. It is done. The trap is set. Now, all they need is a train. The switch is set. The bomb is buried. Saunders looks at his men. His face is a mask of sweat and grease. "Let's get the hell out of here," he whispers. They turn back toward the ocean. They don't walk. They scramble, they move low through the tall grass, retracing their steps, but then a sound cuts through the night air. A whistle, long, mournful, and loud. The men freeze mid-step. They look at each other. That wasn't a distant sound, that was close. The train, it's coming. And it's coming fast. The schedule was wrong. Or maybe there was no schedule, it doesn't matter. The target is rushing toward them at 40 miles an hour. Saunders signals frantically. Run, all discipline vanishes. This is a race against death if they are still on the beach when that bomb goes off. The explosion will turn the night into day. The flash will illuminate the entire coastline. They will be spotted instantly. They crash through the bamboo. Branches whip their faces. Boots slip in the mud. They don't care about the noise anymore. The train is louder. They can hear the chugging of the steam engine. Chuff, chuff, chuff. It sounds like a monster breathing down their necks. They burst out of the tree line and hit the sand, the boats. They grab the rubber rafts. They drag them violently across the gravel. Into the water. The water is freezing, but they don't feel it. The adrenaline is pumping so hard their blood feels like fire. Paddle. Saunders screams. They dig their blades into the surf. They push away from the land. Behind them, the train is getting closer. They can see the beam of the locomotive's headlight cutting through the trees. It sweeps across the tracks, illuminating the very spot where they were digging just moments ago. The men in the rafts paddle like they are possessed. They need distance. They need darkness. 100 yards out, 200 yards, the train engine roars out of the forest. It is massive. A 16-car supply train, pulling heavy freight. Smoke pours from the stack. Sparks fly from the wheels. It is heading straight for the trap. The crew and the boat stop paddling. They turn their heads. They can't look away. It is 1:47 a.m. The locomotive thunders down the track. The massive steel wheels roll over the wooden ties. They roll over the spot where the 55-pound charge is buried. The wheel hits the micro switch. The circuit closes. Boom. The world ends. It isn't just an explosion. It is an eruption. The 55-pound charge detonates directly under the boiler of the steam engine. The boiler explodes, adding its own massive pressure to the blast. The night sky is ripped apart. A ball of orange and white fire shoots 200 feet into the air. The silence of the Japanese coastline is shattered by a sound so loud it hits the men in the rafts like a physical punch to the chest. The locomotive, 100 tons of steel, is tossed into the air like a child's toy. It flies upward, tumbling end over end. It hangs there for a second, suspended in the fireball, before crashing down. It lands on top of the cars behind it. The rest of the train slams into the wreckage. Cars pile up, twisting, buckling, screeching. Ammunition inside the cargo cars begins to cook off. Pop, pop, boom. Secondary explosions ripple through the train. Shrapnel rains down on the forest. Pieces of burning metal fall into the ocean with a hiss. Out at sea, the USS Barb shudders. Shockwave travels through the water and hits the submarine's hull. Inside the control room, Commander Fluckey grips the periscope handles. He is watching the fire. It is beautiful. It is terrifying. He yells, "Heat up the diesels. Get us out of here. Back on the beach." Chaos erupts. The explosion has woken up the entire island. Sirens start to wail in the distance. Searchlights snap on from the guard towers, sweeping the beach frantically. They are looking for an army. They are looking for bombers. They don't know what hit them. The Japanese guards start firing blindly into the night. Tracers zip through the air, aiming at shadows. The light from the burning train illuminates the water. The orange glow spreads out across the waves for a terrifying second. The light reaches the rubber rafts. The men shrink down. They stop paddling. They are illuminated. If anyone looks out to sea, they are dead. But the eyes of the enemy are fixed on the burning train. The Japanese soldiers are running toward the wreck, not looking at the ocean. Saunders watches the inferno. He sees the twisted metal. He hears the screams of the dying train. He whispers, "Magnificent, but they are not safe yet. The submarine is waiting, but to get there, they have to paddle back through the same water, past the patrol boats that are now waking up." Saunders taps the shoulder of the man in front of him. "Let's go home." The paddle back to the submarine was the longest mile of their lives. Behind them, The Japanese coast was burning. Sky was glowing orange. Sirens were wailing like banshees, but ahead of them, in the black fog, lay safety. The 8 men pulled at the oars, their muscles screamed. Their lungs burned, but they didn't stop. Finally, the dark silhouette of the USS Barb loomed out of the mist. It looked like a castle made of steel. They reached the side, hands reached down from the deck. Strong arms grabbed them, hauled them up, and pulled them inside. Commander Fluckey was waiting on the bridge. He looked at Paul Saunders. He looked at the soot-covered faces of his men. He didn't say a word, he just grinned. He shouted, "Clear the bridge, dive, dive." The hatch slammed shut. The locking wheel spun. The vents opened. A rush of air escaped. The USS Barb slipped beneath the waves, vanishing into the deep black ocean just as the Japanese patrol planes arrived overhead. They were gone like ghosts. Inside the submarine, the tension broke. Men cheered. They clapped each other on the back. The cook brought out coffee. For the first time in hours, the 8 men could breathe. They had done the impossible. They had invaded Japan. They had destroyed a train, and they had all come back alive on the shore. The Japanese military was in chaos. Reports went up the chain of command. They were confused. They couldn't believe it was a submarine. They thought it was an air raid. They thought it was a secret group of saboteurs living in the mountains. The idea that 8 American sailors had rowed a boat to shore, planted a bomb, rowed back, was simply too humiliating to admit, but the damage was done. The psychological blow was massive. The Japanese realized that nowhere was safe, not even their own train lines, not even their own backyard. The USS Barb continued its patrol, but that night remained the crown jewel of their career. When the submarine finally returned to Pearl Harbor, the crew unveiled their battle flag. Submarine flags are usually covered in symbols of the ships they have sunk: destroyers, tankers, cargo ships. But at the bottom center of the USS Barb's flag, there was a new symbol, a symbol that no other submarine in the history of the world has ever displayed: a steam locomotive. It was a badge of honor, a testament to the night when the rules of naval warfare were thrown out the window. Commander Eugene "Lucky" Fluckey went on to receive the Medal of Honor. He became one of the most decorated officers in the Navy, but he always said that his greatest pride was his crew. The men who volunteered, the men who didn't hesitate when he asked them to do the impossible. Paul Saunders, Billy Hatfield, and the rest of the landing party. They weren't super soldiers. They were just sailors, ordinary men who found themselves in an extraordinary moment and rose to meet it. The war ended a few weeks later. The atomic bombs fell. The peace treaties were signed. The story of the USS Barb faded into history books, but we should not forget it. We should not forget the image of those 8 men, paddling through the freezing dark, toward an enemy shore, armed with nothing but a homemade bomb and the courage in their hearts. They proved that innovation, bravery, and a little bit of madness can change the course of history. This was the only ground combat operation on the Japanese home islands during World War II, and it was carried out by a submarine. If the bravery of these men moved you, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It helps us keep these stories alive. It helps us ensure that men like Billy Hatfield and Lucky Fluckey are never forgotten. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are digging up the most incredible stories from the archives every single week. And tell me in the comments, would you have volunteered if the captain asked for 8 men for a suicide mission? Would you have raised your hand? I'll see you in the next video.